have a really great day ahead of us. So you might have heard a song playing as we got started. That is from our class playlist that we created with all the songs that you all submitted. So we're going to be hearing a few of those throughout the day and hearing a little bit about why you chose that song. So just a bit of fun as we're going throughout. But our first song was Freedom. And right away, Brian was like, "That's my song." So, Brian, do you want to tell us a little bit about why you chose that as kind of your theme song for doing this work?
I forgot everything I wrote, but no, it just spoke to me. It's just like from the melody to the words, it's like your what do you call it? Like your theme song. Keep fighting, to keep moving forward despite what's going on, to not give up. So.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, it's incredible, like the power of music, right? And how that can motivate us in times when you feel like you just need a little boost in energy. So we'll get to hear a few of those throughout the day. And also want to remind us as we get started that we will have breaks formally built in. But as always, please do what you need to do to take care of yourself, to stay engaged. So if you need to move around and stretch, if you need a different chair, because we just put you into place. So if you need a different layout, feel free to do that. There's plenty of options in terms of seating. If you need, there's water in the fridge. There's tea that we can get started, and hopefully coffee we can get started soon. Restrooms are in the very back. If you need to get up and need a mask break, just kind of remove yourself so you maintain some distance, and feel free to do that. So just please take care of yourselves as you're here for a very full day. So we're going to get started the way that we always do by reading our vision and our objectives and reminding us why we're here and what we're going to take from today's lesson, today's session rather. So this, acknowledge that the PowerPoint is a little tough in this room. So you also have this in front of you in your session guides, as well as in your journal, beginning of today's session 3. So can I have someone to read our vision?
When education advocates and aspiring school board members are empowered with the knowledge and network they need to drive systemic change, every child will have the opportunity to succeed in school and beyond, and the entire community will be positively impacted.
Thanks, Jackie. And can someone else read our objectives for today?
Classmates will be able to articulate who they are and how that ties into why they want to serve the community as a school board member or education advocate. Understand how their values, identity, and background influence their perception of the school system, as well as what that means for their platform, the change they want to make. Draft an initial vision for the specific change they want to make and the seat from which they want to make it. Build their connections to other participants by sharing their own values and motivations and by supporting their classmates as they share their values and motivations. Feel connected with and inspired by their peers and capable of working together to make it.
Thanks, Kendra. So those are really big topics for today. And one thing that we want to acknowledge is that we're all in different places when it comes to this conversation, all different paths of our journey. And so we understand that some folks are maybe further along, some of you are initially starting to explore these topics. And that is all okay, right? That is part of being in this space together. Some of you might have had conversations like this before, trainings like this before, and every time it's different because the people in the room are different. So we want you to be really open in the learning, and just to support one another as we're going through this conversation. We've heard from classmates in the past that they felt like maybe they couldn't share those really big revolutionary ideas because they felt like maybe other classmates weren't as far along in that journey. And we don't want you to censor yourself, right? We want those really big ideas, those big revolutionary concepts for you to challenge and be challenged, right? This is a co-learning space. You're not just responsible for your own learning, but really helping one another in this experience. So, just reminding us of that idea, that some of us might have thought about how do we, upend white supremacy and these systems of oppression. And if you're there, that's great. And you can certainly bring that into the space. If you're not quite there, that's also okay. And you can voice that, and you can ask questions, and you can have that dialogue. That's the only way that we're going to be able to really move past these concepts. We're going to talk a lot about these issues throughout our whole 7 months together, because we know it's not just a one and done, but these conversations and a lot of the systemic issues impact us every day and in a lot of different ways. So this is something that we'll hear time and time again over the next 7 months. So just be open to that learning today. Recognize that it might be challenging, and we have incredible facilitators that can give us some tools of, like, when you are challenged, you know what we can do in the moment to work through that. But we look forward to the conversation. So a big session, really exciting. I'm going to transition into Lisa so she can introduce the incredible team that we have for you that is going to guide us through this work.
All right, thanks, Nicole. Okay, so, I know it's hard to see. So, I have the pictures up here. No, they're standing in the room because I needed their names up here. So, remember, the first thing we want you to do is write down the names of our expert guests or facilitators in your journal. So, if you have your journal today on page 25, jot down David. So, we got David Weaver and Marion Hodges-Bigland. So even if you just put David and Marion on that line, and we're doing that, remember, because you all are going to meet like 40 to 50 different expert guests during this time. And come February, you might be like, wait a minute, who was it that did this session for us? So we write it down here to remember that. And then just remember, keep in mind that Nicole updates a Google Sheet with all of our expert guests' contact information in it. So if you ever want to reach back out to one of our facilitators, our expert guests, you have their contact info. All right, so go ahead and jot down Marion and David. So as you all heard from Marion's story that you listened to before, for pre-work today, Marion and I go way back. We worked together on staff at Teach for America back in the early 2000s. Whenever I joke that I feel like one of the old timers in the Teach for America world, I'm always like, aha, Marion was there before me. So
Or we had email.
all of us 90s core members are like, let's stick together. Okay, so, and then David and Nicole actually worked together for years at Public Allies. And then David and I had a chance to work together when I was a CPS board member, and we roped David in to facilitating the conversations for us about how are we going to define diversity, equity, inclusion, and excellence in education and CPS. And their work is really around helping people understand who they are, what they value, and what their why is, and also understanding the frameworks and the systems and the structures that we all live in, and then how to bring that all together so that we're really living and leading and working and volunteering with purpose and with intention. So it's going to be a great day with them. Before we dive in, a couple quick logistics. One, we want to point out the space we're in. So this space was generously given to us by ISH. And ISH is a Jewish arts and culture organization. This space is their teen space. So this space was entirely designed by kids. So when I came a couple of months ago, it was a blank slate. It was like literally concrete floors and white walls. And then they brought in a bunch of teams who wanted to co-design the space. Went through a whole design process. They did everything from picking all of the stuff, furniture. We were joking before we got here, this was all ergonomically designed for a teenager, not like a grown adult to be like, get me out of this chair. So they designed all that. They did all the painting, all the design. So very cool space, and we're very grateful to ISH for letting us use their space today. The other thing is, if you need Wi-Fi, this is the info up here. And then, of course, we're just trying to keep everyone safe. So we know it's a long day. Like Nicole said, if you need a mask break, go ahead and step outside. But while we're here, let's keep them on right. And then we are trying to keep some distance between each other, as you can see. So this is an awesome space. You're going to be going in and out of small groups. If your group wants to go sit at a picnic table outside or take some of these cool chairs, that's great. But we do just ask, be conscious of how close you are to each other so we can keep each other safe. All right, cool. I'm going to turn it over to David and Marion. It's going to be a great day. I don't know if you need this at all. Okay.
Maybe not. Well, you got it.
We got it.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
I'm going to do this amped up voice thing because hearing folks, fan, acoustics, probably not going to be the easiest thing, right? So I'm going to try to be conscious of that. When you're speaking, you might want to be conscious of that because it's going to be hard to hear each other otherwise. as Lisa said, my name is David Wheeler. I am born and raised here in Cincinnati, Ohio. I have escaped 3 times. The final escape will take. I am now living my life in South Florida, which is crazy for a number of reasons, but I live in Hollywood, Florida, and that is a place that I'm probably going to call home for the rest of my days. I have the first question for you that we're going to ask probably repeatedly throughout the day. Why are you here? What's your why when it comes to thinking about what it might mean to be a school board member, to run for school board? What's your why? Part of what you were able to do as part of your pre-work was to get a little snapshot from Elisa, from myself, from Nicole, from Marion, about why we decided to get into this work. And sometimes it's not even really a conscious decision. Sometimes the work finds us. Why? What have we done in our lives that have positioned us and put us into places where the work could find us? But we're probably gonna, like, at least 3 times a day ask you, what's your why? I'm a believer in the 3-question rule. I ask you once, we get what we call your pageant answer, right? That's the, like, I believe the children are the future, Whitney Houston quote. That's the first level you get. When somebody asks you why a second time, you gotta go a little deeper than that, right? It becomes a little less pageanty and a little bit more like, oh, you really wanna know, right? Yeah, we really wanna know. The third time we ask the question, this is sort of gut check. What have I not said in those first 2 pieces that would allow me to actually convey to somebody what this is really about for me? This is why number 1. My hope is that you're thinking through, like, am I giving a pageant answer? Or am I really beginning to think through my why? Why is this important? Why is this important? If you're thinking about putting yourself in a position where you are going to be able to make decisions, think about access, choices, and opportunities for young people, you should know why. You should know why you're doing that. You should know why you are doing some things with your life to put you in the position to do that. So today we're here to help you think about that. That's overall what our goal is in having the opportunity to think about what it is you may have seen through our videos, because everybody watched our videos, right? What are some common themes? Did you see anything that might have struck you as you saw and heard the stories that were told by any of us, by Nicole, by Lisa, by Marion, by myself? Was there anything that jumped out at you like, common thread that might be there? Trish?
Authenticity. So when you just said what's your pageant answer, I think the answer that you guys gave was your 3rd time you were asked to answer. And so that authenticity resonated with me. Just feel like there's some realness to it.
Thank you. Emmanuel, I'll start your hand.
Oh, unique. It's okay.
Oh,
I just call Enrique. I get it all.
I'm gonna back up.
Okay.
And then like angle.
And it's funny because
Yeah, I know. You look like, whoa.
He's like, he ain't looking at me. I will do that too. I will say somebody like, go ahead, man.
I blame my mom all the time for this. Everybody. No, I was gonna say one thing that I noticed that all 3 of you had mentioned was your upbringing or something about your background was awful. I thought that was very vulnerable and provided some insight.
Excellent. Being stretching.
Well, there's this theme of service before leadership. All of you served in some nonprofit service type space before you got to this space of leadership, which I think seems like it grounded you in a particular ideology.
Excellent. The idea of being grounded in a particular ideology is huge. Thinking about authenticity, how it is that comes across. Where does that come from in terms of your own upbringing and your sense of who I am and how that has been drilled into us during the course of our lives? We're going to talk a little later about messages that we get and how those messages carry over into our actions. But these are just some things we want you to start thinking about. These are some things that we want to ground you in and why this might be important. Why this might be a place to begin and start. So, that?
Yeah.
Okay, Mary.
Awesome. Thank you, David. Thank you for kicking us off. I am so grateful to be here with you all. I am not from Cincy, as you probably heard in my video, but I kind of want to be. This is such a great place. So it's always a joy to come back and be with you all, and especially to see you all in real life. Because last year we stared at you on a Zoom screen for the whole day. So it's really great to be in person. So thank you for being here. Okay, so I love that what we just kind of started to unpack in terms of the layers of what's your why, the three things. So you know from the pre-work, we're gonna be digging into those layers, like who are you, getting down to the authentic you. Not only what is your why, but like why is it your why? How is who you are showing up in your why? It's really, really important to be authentic. You have to have yourself in it, right? From a real way. And that does require vulnerability, as Unique said. And so I want to name something about vulnerability. We think a lot, vulnerability comes from the Latin word vulner, to wound. So we think that you have to have trust to be vulnerable but really vulnerability is when you're not sure if there's trust because you could get wounded. There is a risk. So what social scientists have actually researched is that trust is actually created not only from someone being vulnerable, but how others receive the vulnerability. So if somebody takes a risk and says something pretty vulnerable and others receive it well, that's where trust is created. So you're going to be sharing a lot today, but you're also going to be receiving other people's stories. You're going to be receiving other people's vulnerability, and that's how you're going to build trust, by receiving really thoughtfully and carefully as people share some vulnerable stuff. So you have important roles to play in your sharing and also in your receiving, and that's how we build community together and really get to know each other on deeper levels. So that's what we'll be doing today. So just keep that in mind. So we're going to start by moving, and Isabel is going to be, we're going to do what Isabel needs to do, but she said she's cool with moving, so we're going to come over here, and we're going to come to these lines, we're going to get up and get some energy going. And Nicole, do you think we can hear the music from out here?
I think so, yeah, and I can
Okay,
move closer. Yeah.
so we have some X's, and what do you think about this? I want this table to go over here by Caitlin on this line, and everybody else go on the other line. Just find that.
Hoping to share something that will hopefully inspire me in my work that I'm doing. Because like when I'm hearing speaking at first, you know what you're doing. Like you're here for a reason. You know how you're aligning your life is for a reason. So hopefully that's what I hope.
I think what you said about hearing it and speaking is important because I think a lot of stuff runs around in our brains. But when you actually say it out loud and you hear it, it does feel like, I would say, different. So I can appreciate that thought.
And it's also like so much right? I'm one of those persons that I
Share.
I do too.
Next person share if you haven't already.
Make this tangible. Okay, I can have this big goal, but now I'm in the space of expression.
Yeah, I think that's my kind of thought for today too. And just kind of hear other people's journeys too. I know my own, but actually when I did my timeline, I was surprised at what I didn't know. Because it's weird. That's not why I'm here. It's literally nothing to do with why I'm here. It's like a big chunk of my life. And I thought, I'm like, I forgot that. So I'm here to like learn some things about myself maybe and just kind of understand that in the context of what I feel like. So I don't know if that's going to be
I really am interested to hear other people's why. I think I spend so much time about my like, oh, this is my focus, or oh, this is
Okay, we're switching. So we're going to move around again. Nicole's going to play another song. Keep moving. Here we go. This way.
And we're walking, and we're walking, and we're walking, and we're walking. Stop.
Alright, actually, Nicole, I think we can hear the song. Whose song was that?
That was Survivor.
Survivor. Who played Survivor? You need to tell us about my two Survivor.
So I chose Destiny's Child Survivor as my song because I feel like it speaks a lot, like my background, a lot of things that I went through in terms of family stuff, how I got through my educational experiences, elementary on through high school. I had a lot of, unfortunately, bad experiences with educators, really throwing those stereotypes out there. I had school counselors tell me not to apply to college and waste my time. I ended up doing my master's degree in that same college, so I just feel like I am a survivor throughout all that negativity. So it's my hope to kind of push that onto you today.
Thank you, Unique. Okay, so your next Sherry is gonna be, what do I wanna learn today? We're gonna go a little quicker. We're gonna have about 45 seconds each person. So what do I wanna learn today? Go. Good morning. All right, what would you like to learn today?
I want to learn more about everything. I want to learn as much as I want to learn what evolved. Like, I don't feel like I know what was why. Like, I have my past answer, but like, I feel like a lot of people know why is like, I experienced this specific trauma and I want to make it better. And like, I'm pretty much majority identity in every way. Like, I haven't experienced like trauma in the system in the way that other people have. So like, how did I end up here as like a compassionate person who wants to fix these things even though they aren't really hurting me other than they're hurting the life. Yeah, and then I'm so thinking about my life.
Okay, switch partners if you haven't already. Other person share.
I never knew that about myself. Yeah.
Other person share if you haven't already switched.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like we're taught to like always think about the other person. And nobody wants to take up too much. Definitely looking forward to more than like learning about the budget and finances. So that's also important. That's going to be hard. Yeah, that's what am I doing?
All right. Nicole.
It's important.
Okay, we're gonna walk. David. We're walking. Okay, here we go.
I'm so ready.
All right, let's go. Find it. Keep walking. All right. Let's go. There you go.
You're fine.
Oh, you're up to next.
Let's switch. What? Whose song was that? Tell us about it, Alex.
So the roots. Do you want more?
Why did you pick it?
Well, so here's one. My family, I'm sort of I'm not a parent, but I am. And so my mom, I grew up in Maryland. Parents divorced when I was 2, and so we lived kind of all different houses and stuff. But my dad from Pennsylvania, my mom's from Philly. So the roots, of course, are from Philly. So that's the roots. But when you like see a band, this has been a time when it's slowly getting along. Like when you go to like a concert, you have no idea who they have to skate. Oh my God, they're amazing. And so it's like, there was sort of like no preconceptions at all. It was sort of stuff that you return up to the roots, like sex, so just always happy. And then they become big. And you're like, no, I like them back. So I think that song just always puts me back in
how they see themselves, how the world saw them, and how they feel. We're definitely on the second and the third one.
Yeah, yeah.
Going through your bag, there's time.
No, I'm not leaving.
Oh, I do like this one.
Make it fun.
Everybody march like
Walking down the aisle. Walking down the aisle. Walking down the aisle.
you gotta get it.
Someone next to you. We're already talking about it.
I hope it ended now.
Yeah, split on good terms. Okay. Split on good terms. Yeah, still love there.
So that was my song, and my first year of teaching at Aiken High School, I had ninth graders, and I quickly realized that there was a lot of relationship building to happen because I think they looked at me and I looked at them, and we were some very different places. And to get on the same page, it took a lot of getting to know my kids, and so a lot of time after school, a lot of time in my classroom, a lot of time just hearing and understanding their journeys. So at the end of that year, I made a slideshow, and there were some pictures in the class, but it was mostly them doing their things, and we wanted their names, and we seen them in their world. And so I made a slideshow, and at the end of the year, I put in some music, and that was the first song on my playlist. And then my last year, they were going to be seniors. A girl that was elected valedictorian asked me if she could use that to play during like their senior breakfast, and we were all like crying because they were so cutie and little, like 14 and 13 and knuckleheads. And by the time that they saw it again, and I really hadn't seen it again either, they were pretty close to the end of their high school journey. I was feeling that, and just the fact that she asked me if she could use it, and then I forgot about it. I'm digging through my drive, and then I started watching it again, and I was like, oh my god. So every time I hear that song, I think of them, and I wonder where they are on their journey now, because they have such incredibly amazing. Just I hope that they hear, like, you can't do things, you can be best, you can be anything. And I just hope they carry that with them too. So that's why I put that song.
All right. So we're going to give you 1 minute for this last question, and it's what, if anything, am I nervous about today? What, if anything, am I nervous about?
Right click. Leave her, keep her.
All right, everybody. Thank you so much. That was the start of our vulnerability, and we just want to name that not all of us have been able to be vulnerable in our lives. We're talking a lot about the systemic forces around us related to our identity and oppression in this world, and so there's a lot of real risk in this society to be vulnerable. So our hope is that you are starting to create that safe space where you all get to be vulnerable
group here, group back there. Nicole will come around. We have a couple people who didn't make it this morning, so Nicole will let you know if you have somebody in your home team who's missing today. Here's the deal with home teams. Home teams, we hope these teammates are the people who are really going to help you process all that you're learning over the 7-month learning program together, okay? So we know you are likely going to make lots of friends here. We see it happen all the time. It is one of the best parts about school, right? Is that you build these real relationships and friendships. Those might be the people you naturally go to when you have a big idea or a thought or a question. That is great. But like we talked about night 1, we don't want to just go to our friends. They are probably the people who are going to agree with you. We also want to go to people who have different experiences than us and who might challenge us. And so Nicole and I were really thoughtful in constructing these home teams so that you would have people with different professional experiences, different lived experiences, all kind of coming together. So we're excited about these home teams. We have seen this play out before. Just one quick example. I'm like losing my breath trying to scream, so if I'm like too loud, let me know too. But like so one quick example of this. Class 2, we used to just do buddies. And we eventually realized like just pairing people up was a little too much for any one person to carry. And it was really great to have lots of diverse thinking, but in that class 2, one of the women came up to me towards the end of school and said, when I first got my buddy, I was really worried. Like on paper we had nothing in common. So she's really young, she's a classroom teacher in CPS. He's older, he has kids in CPS, and he works in IT at one of like the biggest companies in town. And so she said, I just didn't know if he was going to take me seriously. And she said, like, I really quickly realized that he really valued my perspective as a classroom teacher, like living this work day in and day out. And she said, I would realize he was asking me questions during sessions. He would like go back and think about my answers. He would like call me in between or like pull me aside during sessions and be like, I just was thinking about what you said. And, you know, and so she said, I very quickly realized he really valued my part of this this relationship, and she said, I quickly learned, like, having a parent of CPS kids right here is so helpful to me as a teacher. And then also just the way that people are trained differently to solve problems in different professions. So she was saying, like, at the end of sessions, we would bring you together and say, like, talk to your home team about this question or that question. Like, the way he would think through problem solving, having been trained as, like, an IT professional, not a classroom teacher, opened up, like, a whole new way for her to think through problem solving. So that's just like one example of why we kind of try to put together people who on paper may not, you know, have a lot in common, but we all know we share this common goal at the end of figuring out how do we bring more opportunity to businesses today. So, turn over to Mary.
Thank you, Lisa. So you're going to we're going to have 6 small groups discussions total today. So you're going to be with your home team the whole time. I tell you that to say this is going to feel short, but don't worry. You have 5 other times to chat with them all day. So in this first small group, what you're going to do, and we also have a session guide for you on your table that has all the prompts to any small group chat. So if you don't need to write down what we're saying, it's right here on your session guide. So this is the home team introductions. You also have, thank you, Jackie, for letting me use the paper here. You also have a little grid where you can take notes on your home team members so you can remember, like, oh wait, what does it have to do, and why is she here? So that you can kind of keep that context. So these are the 2 tools you'll need right now. And in these 6 groups today, I recommend that you pick a time, that you rotate the timekeeper role. Pick one person in your home team to like timekeep each session. We'll timekeep the macro time. You're going to have 10 minutes for this group, and we'll tell you when there's about 2 minutes left. But in terms of like rotating speakers, I recommend a timekeeper because that'll just make sure everybody gets to speak. Because there's nothing worse when it's like, time's up, and 2 people haven't got to go. So we want to make sure everybody gets to get into it, and again, you'll have many chances to keep talking to each other, not only today, but through this whole journey. So that's the instructions. So your questions that you're going to chat is introduce yourself, and why are you here, and then what? We phrase this as like, why is your home team going to be glad that you're in their group? So what that means is, what can you offer to the group? What's a particular thing that's about you that they're going to be grateful that you're their home team member, right? So those are the prompts, and you'll have 10 minutes. Any questions?
Any more of these? And then is the home team divided? Like, after a minute? Is it 4 or
That's
is
a great
it 8?
question. This is your 4 group right here. You have a 5th who's not here. Together. You will have many more chances to talk. So I know that felt probably not enough time.
people have been involved in a group, and you're like, somebody said, now we have to create community agreements, and everybody went, oh. And anyone? Some folks. The reason why people go, oh, is because community agreements can be a very long and very stressful process. Mainly because we're trying to incorporate everything that everyone wants to happen in the space, because everyone needs something slightly different. We were just having a conversation about sort of like, how do we accommodate everybody's needs? What is it that's really going to allow for folks to find enough of what they need and what we have for us to be able to move forward? And so you're going to see a couple of things here that might seem familiar to you. There's some things that actually might get at a little bit of what you might need. So we're going to ask you, as we talk about these things, think about, it's not quite maybe the way I would word it, but guess I can live with it. So I want you to go in with that mindset of it, not I need this word, change to this word, and then it's going to be okay. Folks okay with what I'm saying? You get where I am? Wonderful. So, there are a number of things that come to mind when we start thinking about group agreements and how we're going to be together. Actually, you should already have some. You should have some expectations about how it is you all are coming together that were shared with you earlier in your process in school board school. Am I talking to the wind? Everybody know what I'm talking about? We're good? Yes. Wonderful. So you have something that you're starting with. So we're not starting from scratch in terms of how it is you're going to do this. There are already some things that you already have to be able to begin this process with. Anytime I'm usually in a space, and if you've been in a space with me, the words I'm about to say are going to be like, oh my God, he's talking about that again. Right? I am always talking about that. I'm always talking about courageous conversation, guidelines, and goals. Because those things are things that shape how it is we're going to talk about things, especially when we're dealing with issues around identity. Especially when we're dealing with issues. These things become a lot more important in this realm because we want people to be thoughtful about how it is, what it is you're saying, why it is you're saying it, and what that might mean in terms of your ability to actually have more dialogue about that as a result of what that will mean. Bear in mind, Courageous Conversation Guiding Lives. This is the work of Glenn Singleton, who has done Courageous Conversations about race. That is where these come from. Some of us have adapted them to make some of our other environments comfortable enough for people to be in. So I just want to make note that we give credit where credit is due to where these things come from. Courageous Conversation Guidelines. Stay engaged. Stay engaged in the ways that we're talking about morally, socially, intellectually, and emotionally. You're staying engaged morally to think about, is there a right or wrongness to what it is I'm thinking? How's that coming up for me? Socially is, am I moved to action? Is this something that's making me feel like I need to do something about this? We need to do something about this, collectively. Intellectually, I've gone to a place of, I'm all kind of in my head about this, right? There's something that I can really think through. There's a thinking process that's been galvanized by what is happening and what I'm seeing. And then emotionally, I'm in my feelings about it, I'm really okay being in my feelings about it. Because some things are emotional. And it's okay to be in that space with it. The thing is, be mindful of where you are. And also be watchful for where other people might be. Because those are the things that generate dialogue. That's how we stay connected, and that's how we stay together in doing this. Speak their truth. Most folks would tell you this means we need to use I statements when we talk. That is absolutely true. Speak from the I, speak from the place of your own personal experience. I also want people to think about being experts of their experience. And I say that because I've been in so many settings where people go, I don't have anything to share. I don't have anything that I think I want to say. When it comes to talking about issues of identity, not all of us are as comfortable as we can or maybe want to even be. And so what happens? Kind of climb up. Don't really have a lot to say. Some of these things are based in other aspects of our identity. Society hasn't allowed for a number of us to be able to be vulnerable in some of those ways. Marian talked about that a little bit before we came back. And so sometimes there's going to be a push for us to be able to get in that space. being an expert of your own experience means, quite frankly, if nobody knows you like you know you, nobody knows what your experience has been. You know that path. You've walked that path. If you don't share it, it doesn't get said. Not everybody's experience is the same, so Jackie can't say the same thing. And Crystal, well, Crystal, you know, we share something in common. She'll bring it up. That's not Jackie. Jackie's experience is Jackie's experience. And if Jackie doesn't share her experience, then something is lost to this group. Y'all feeling me? We clear about where we're going? Experience discomfort. Experience discomfort isn't like a mandate. You need to experience discomfort. Experience discomfort is much more along, get clear about why you might be uncomfortable. What is making me uncomfortable? Why am I feeling? And then maybe even, what do I need to ask in this situation that might allow me to gain more understanding, or something that might make my feeling of discomfort maybe pass a little. Right? The one that I didn't get to right up here at this point was, accept and expect the fact that there won't be closure. You all have started this process before we got to today. You will be going through this process for a bit longer. So the conversations won't end. This is just a way station as part of the ongoing dialogue you're gonna have. Right? Those are the courageous conversations. Part of what it is that you've already got from being part of school board school. Being present. Choose gratitude. Maintain confidentiality. Confidentiality is a good one. Oftentimes we say, treat the space like Vegas. Right? What happens in school board school stays in school board school. We want you to take the learning and do what you need to in the community with the learning. People's individual stories, mask is a great representation of that, right? Keep that here. Do what you need to do to take care of yourself, to be present. The idea of engagement, and I think that that's what I'm getting on a little bit about being an expert of your own experience, figuring out how do you engage best. You have a lot of agency on what that looks like during the day. One of the things that we do in some of the spaces is sometimes we just like, maybe I'm just not the person who's gonna actually say a whole lot. Doing some of this in virtual time has also meant that a lot of things I'm relying on things in the chat and trying to figure out ways to get like who's talking, who's not. Some people are like, I don't want to talk. This is not where I am right now. Let me tell you a little something about that. We want to accommodate people who that's not my go-to mode. That's not entirely opera. Sometimes we just ask people in those spaces, can you name your silence? Can you name your silence? And you don't have to go into a whole lot of detail, but if you say, you know something, David, that's hitting on something that's really close to home for me right now, I don't really have the words to do that right now. Or you're talking in your small group and something like that comes up, I gotta name my silence. My silence really is about this particular piece, and then you have to go any further. What it does is, it stops people from sort of running up the ladder of inference about why you're not saying it. And trust me, consciously or unconsciously, folks are running up the ladder of inference about what might be going on or not going on. And so, naming our silence oftentimes puts a real stopper on it. It's a good way to sort of check ourselves and be able to think about what is my participation and engagement look like. Reach for understanding, give and receive grace. Also about expect and accept non-closure. Have fun and be you. One of the things I always talk about the work I do, we can have fun doing serious things. It is perfectly okay to have fun doing serious things. As a matter of fact, it's perfect. Who wants to come into a situation where I'm just going to be stressed out and angry all day long and sit through it the entire time period? Not a good day, right? 5 o'clock is going to be long and coming. If that's what it is. These are a number of the things that I said, like speak your truth versus generalities. I think that's an important piece to note. And then it's going to teeter on this idea about confidentiality, all right? And so speaking in generalities oftentimes can leave things feeling vague. Like, I hear you, but I'm not really sure what it is I hear you. You're in this position and you have agency to make a judgment call about the level of detail you decide to share. And if there's something that you feel like is maybe a little bit out of bounds, name it. Hey, this is why it is. I don't feel like I can go any further talking about this, but I need to give you a little bit of context so you know where I'm coming from. That's what the ask is. Build new connections. Deeper understanding is some of the things that you're going to come from this session. Deeper understanding about yourself. Deeper understanding about yourself in relation to other people. Deeper understanding about yourself in a more systemic view. Because how you see you and how the people you sitting across the table from see you may not necessarily be the way society sees you or institutions see you. And so we'll probably be fluctuating at a number of different levels with regard to that during the course of the day, but it all starts with you. I'm gonna shut up for a second in order to make sure anything I'm saying not landing for somebody, or I need clarity about what you mean by ... Hearing none. I also need folks up here. Am I shouting at you? I am trying to be heard over the phone stuff. Okay. Great. So given all that front loading, all those things that you have, a lot of these concepts overlap. So again, it's not as though, like these are vastly different things. What's missing? What is it that you feel like is really important to be able to create that space where you feel safe enough, where you feel brave enough to be able to share in the context of some of the things that we'll be sharing today? You want to describe for me some of some things?
Part of why our list grows every year is because people do ask you. So make your mark, make you feel like there's anything missing. It's okay.
Feeling something around noticing the space, just noticing like who's showing up and who isn't, looking at power dynamics, who's talking, who's silent, who's been silent, habitually.
So initially, Chris, there was a read the room piece, but then it's more specific than read the room, right? As facilitators, part of what it is that we do is we pan, right? Panning is just making sure that you're looking around the room and engaging, looking at people's eyes, understanding what it is. Like, is somebody with me? Like, do they have their headphones on? Are they thinking about getting their groceries? What's going on? Panning is a tool that you use as a facilitator just to be able to gauge what's happening in the room. And so you need to be panning, especially in your small groups, but also bring that to your larger group as well. What are you seeing? What are you not seeing? To Chris's point, what does that mean in terms of the ways that people are or are not engaging? If you feel safe enough in these spaces, have a one-on-one conversation. Like, hey, I wondered, or you had a look on your face. Is there something you want to talk about? You can always offer. It doesn't mean they have to take you up on it. But part of building community is about how do I see who the people in my community are, and then what are the actions that I'm able to take to be able to build and strengthen those relationships. Anything else? Damien.
This may sound weird, but in this sort of COVID time, it's pretty easy to hide behind masks. I guess both literal and much more literal than at this point. And this is going to be an incredibly difficult thing for me because I don't trust people, and I'm not terribly vulnerable. So I guess this may be, so that's the acknowledgement of the mask.
Yes.
And also, I don't know, just
if I seem like I'm hiding behind,
Cause I'm asking big, cause I got a big head.
if I seem like I'm hiding behind it, just
Give me a gentle punch.
Brian, thank you, David.
Try to make sure this wasn't said, but I was thinking as he well, before you started talking, but afterwards, like I don't know if there's like a piece of self-awareness, like I can come ask you the question, but like checking it outside of ourselves, like you say, he doesn't trust people, right? So we have to ask ourselves how committed to the success of the group that we are, and how committed to the mission that we are, so that we can lower our walls and receive each other in our communication, if that makes sense.
Excellent. It does. Recognizing that people are going to be on
Yeah.
different levels around that. And again, part of that is how we've been socialized to be vulnerable in places with other people. How are we doing on time, y'all? 'Cause, you know, y'all know I won't go. Anything else?
I don't have an addition to the list. I just have like a meta question. I feel like what we're doing right now is just so important, and I've been in a space where, it was mentioned, like when we don't do this and we just throw up norms and we say, okay, these are the norms, that they tend to be, catered to white supremacy, and so like the dominant, so to speak, culture, and so I think that this process, while it takes time, I think it's just very, very important, and now, when I'm in spaces and people just throw up norms, I'm like, y'all don't actually care about what the people in the room want and need, and I don't know, I'm just thinking a lot about that, like, in spaces when people do that, like, how can I say, hey, like, why don't we see if the group has anything else they have to offer, like, how can I push people to be more conscious of that? Because people do it, classrooms do it, teachers do it. And they're cute little posters with all their little norms, and kids don't give any insight into what they want in the space, so I just wanted to add that.
Appreciate that. I think it's interesting that we're in a space that was created by young people, right? Somebody saw and asked, what is it you want this space to be, right? And so my hope is that part of this process is reflective of the space that we're in, where that can be.
This really, really is your space, and so it is really important to create it together. Because David and I, as much as we want to leave you for every session, we're going to leave you, but you will be in this space. You will have this space not only today but ongoing. So, so it is important to take that time. We really appreciate it. This is why the list keeps growing, because every class adds to the space. So you're not only in your space, but you're like building off of the space of the new classes before you, which is pretty cool too. Thank you. Okay.
So we've got the ones that are there.
Yep. And Brian, am I gonna have, be committed to the success of the group? Was there anything else? Yeah, self-awareness. Self-awareness.
So, given all the vastness of what we have up here on the board, am I hearing that, not necessarily thinking that there's anything, I can find my way into participating with the things that we actually have up here? Can I get a? So, given that, the last thing I'll say before I hand this back to Marion, as facilitators, part of our role is to make sure that we're living into these things. Caitlin, I love the point that you made in terms of how it is that people just throw them up there and they don't even think about them again. Like, we had a group agreement and we're done, right? Group agreements are made because you need to live into them. We need to live into them as your facilitators. You need to live into them as the folks who are going through this process. They're a part of our job is to do that. Part of your job is to do that. I call that the 50-50 rule. We're bringing content, information, and things for you to dig into. You're bringing your life experience, your expertise, your desire, your passion to this group in order to make this all churn. That's the 50-50 agreement. These things on the board are not just owned by us, they're owned by you. And so you need to lean into those things. You need to be able to do that with your peers. You need to be the ones that go, Isabel, right now, right? Did you ask that question because you really, really wanted to know, or did you ask that question because you already thought you knew the answer? Being comfortable enough to do that with one another is going to be a muscle you're going to have to build, right? It's a muscle you'll have to build. But let's try to start it. Make sense? Very, very.
Thank you, David. Thank you, Ruth, for coming together on this. Okay, so we have just grounded in some shared agreements of how we're going to be. We want to also ground in some shared language. So you all read for your pre-work the equity policy for CPS, which includes definitions of diversity and equity and inclusion in the district. And Elisa is going to tell us in just a second about how that story, not how the story, how the policy came to be. And Caitlin just brought another definition into the group, white supremacy. And that is a definition that we also asked you to read about. We recognize everybody's in a different place on their understanding of kind of terms and definitions and concepts of oppression, and how we got to this inequality. And so we wanted to level set on that and make sure we're just introducing that term as well, and also intersectionality. Because we're going to talk a lot about identity today, but we are not only one identity. Our experiences, our lived experience in this world and in these systems is informed not only by one identity, but by all of our identities and how we experience the world, how the world experiences us. So those are two additional terms that we asked you to read for pre-work. And that was also added by our class last year. We used to just talk about the DEI, and last year they were like, we need to talk about these terms too, because they obviously are such a critical part of the discussion, and really the frame, as we think about white supremacy, of why we even need to be talking about equity, right? So what we're going to do now is Elisa's going to tell her story, then we're going to go into one more home team discussion about the definitions, and then we'll have a break. So just let you know that's coming. All right, Elisa.
Okay, so when we talk about shared language, like why is that important? The definitions that you all read for pre-work, those just like happen, right? So when I first joined the CPS school board, one of the first things I realized was that we were all using the words diversity and equity and inclusion, but I didn't think we were all using them in the same way, right? And so I suggested we should have a retreat where we define what these terms mean. And immediately there was pushback, right? Like one of my board members said, when I said that, her quote was, I don't think I need to sit around singing Kumbaya with you all. And I was like, that's not what I think I asked for. But clearly, like something about how I was saying this was not maybe right with her, right? And this was someone who's a very values-aligned board member. Like she really believed in diversity and equity, but like it was not right coming from me. And so, you know, we talk a lot in school board school about network, coalition, etc. So I could have kept talking forever, and that would never have moved her. So part of this was then me thinking, who else is part of my network who also would think that these things are really important for us to talk about, that she might be able to hear more, right? And so that was part of that work. But it was really also because I knew nothing else that I wanted to accomplish in my term was going to happen if we couldn't have this shared language first. And so all of those things I had asked community members to vote for me for, I was not going to be able to do. And so, very long story short, it took about a year before we could even get that retreat scheduled. But then once we got that scheduled, and we wrote David in to facilitate that for us, he did a series of conversations over like 4 different weekends over the course of like 6 months. And by the time we were done with that, we had the definitions that we read about. And they're not perfect, right? But it was like this big step forward. And that board member who was initially so reluctant became one of the champions of the work. And so I think that is also why it's just so important, like in any of the work we do, any of the leadership roles we want to take on, like if we don't care about getting credit for stuff, how much more can get done, right? So like it wasn't like, I want to get the credit for getting an equity policy passed. Instead it was like, this work's important to the kids in our district. Who else do I need to bring in? Who's going to be able to be a voice that my fellow board members can resolution is good. A resolution helps the public know what our shared values are in Cincinnati Public Schools, but it doesn't tie the district to doing anything. So from that resolution, we said if we actually want to have different stuff happening in our district than what's currently happening, we need to make a policy. So we talked a lot about how policy is permanent. So you can have lots of procedures. The procedures come and go. Whoever the director is or whoever the superintendent is, policy stays. So from these definitions is how we ended up saying was right and passed one of the first equity policies in the country. And the really cool thing is that person who I said was so reluctant at first, she was the one who, when we'd be having conversations after we passed that policy, we'd be going back and forth, round and round, she would often stop us and say, if we go back to the language of the equity policy, I think it's clear what direction we have to go. That was a pretty cool full circle moment to see like, this is how we get people on board with why this work's important. And again, that didn't mean that all of a sudden CBS is an equitable place, right? But at least we now had a North Star. We knew that every department, after we passed that policy, every department had to come in and report to the board about how they were now going to align their budget and their work to that policy. So that's just one example of how having shared language was able, really important in terms of us being able to move work forward.
Thanks, Lisa. All right, so in your home teams, you're going to have 10 minutes, which is, again, not going to spend that time. But again, you're going to build off these conversations throughout the day, throughout your time here. And you're just going to share, we have some question prompts for you on the handout. But you don't have to go question by question and answer these. You're going to have a good group discussion. So, but you just want to monitor, make sure everybody gets to share their input at some point. But you're focusing around some of these big questions. So what resonates about these definitions, what's missing? When I say these definitions, it's those three, plus we are adding in like white supremacy culture and intersectionality. And what do you connect about these definitions in your own personal experience? And then also, this is your opportunity to bring in the free work. We asked you to read a lot of stuff. This is where you read about white supremacy culture, white saviorism. We read about the Glisson report. We read about all in Cincinnati. We read about the groundwater and how all these systems are like baked in, right, to the ground. So this is where you can like reference some ahas or takeaways from that as you think about why are these definitions needed in our work. It's not even the definitions. Why do we need to be talking about these concepts in our work at school board school and in CPS? Okay? So you have 10 minutes. We'll give you like a 2-minute warning when your time's almost up, and then after that, we'll go to break. Okay, I really hate cutting off the conversation. Thank you. Want to just hear from like 2 people before we go to break. Like, what's something that came out for you all in your group? 2 people. Yeah.
So for me, I just asked the question, I recognize that this is a document that has been put into policy. But how is it? I said for me, I just asked the group the question that I recognize that this is a document that has been put into policy. My thoughts are, I'm curious to know, how is this language being trickled down to the administrators, to the teachers, to, all those that are working with students, and how do you make this something that, where you're able to measure if it's effective? And then my other question was, okay, as a parent, how do I know that this is being put into action? What do I look for to know that this is something that's effective?
Did your group have answers for you?
Well, we just got.
You cut us off. We were just close.
But I was answering, and I was saying that as a CPS teacher, my first introduction to like actually sitting down and reading this policy was through school.
Wow.
Right. So as a teacher, I mean, these are the things that I strive for, that I want to work for, but for me to actually look at a document and say, oh, this is what we're supposed to be doing anyway. Like, I feel like now that I'm supported in my work, but I'm also looking at other people like, why don't you?
So really, it's such a great, yeah, go ahead.
So we didn't get to share with our group
leaders, look at the impact you can have, look at what's not happening in the conversations that you are gonna be elevating. So thank you, yeah, go ahead.
I just want to tie that up too, is that like, I think one of the things that we always have to remember is like, equity work was happening in our district for years, right? Like, you're gonna, in the next session, you're gonna hear from Rick Williams and Eileen Cooper Reed, who are remarkable people who were school board members well before me. But you're right, it was a moment in time where we said, okay, folks are working real hard, and yet like we don't have this codified. And I think even maybe scarier than what David's saying, that like 2015 we finally got this in CPS, was we were one of the first districts in the country to have an equity policy. When we were trying to write it, I was the chair of the policy committee. We had to, the only kind of other schools we could find, we found a couple of private schools that had equity policies, and then schools in Canada, school districts in Canada. So we were using those. The only other one local in the United States was in Portland. So those are the only ones that we could use to even see what our other districts are doing. So I think that's really important. One thing I'm going to put an exclamation point on what Chris said is that this is something you'll see if you're on the school Facebook group and hub and all those things. At the state level, there's a bill 322 that looks like it's going to pass. It is one of the, not just anti-CRT, we'll get into that a little further, just how much of the values and the things we say should be true in CPS would not be able to be done. Because state policy trumps local policy. So if we have an equity policy and an anti-racism policy in CPS, and 322 passes at the state level, I mean, the data you're asking to collect, we literally could not collect data on things like discipline disproportionality by race. I mean, like, student voice, like students being able to organize themselves would not be allowed. The African American Studies course that's being added to every CPS school, kids could still take. They could not get credit for it. So it is serious, this bill that's going through the State House, so we'll talk about how we organize around that as well.
Okay,
But Mary, I'm taking you on
conversation now, so this is just the beginning of this conversation, okay? So I know we have lots more to say, but let's go on break, and we're gonna come back. It is 10:53, so we're gonna come back.
Hey, Nicole, whose song was that? Do you know?
Yeah, so we heard a couple songs there. The first one was Wake Up, which I think was Kendra's. Yeah, you want to tell us a little bit about?
And y'all, I'm gonna invite you, to just try to be like 1 to 2 sentences, okay?
Yes,
'Cause,
very
I'm gonna keep it going. Thank
I'll
you.
do my best.
Thank you.
So the reason why I selected this song is because I think it just really is a combination of my entire journey. So as a teacher, I really wanted to just focus on teaching our children, but making learning fun and something that they will be able to connect with. And then it's also just honoring the past as well as paying or inviting in, just future leaders and just making change as a collective unit.
Awesome, thank you. We also heard Grace. I think that was Emmanuel's pick. I'm not seeing him, so maybe we'll catch him after. And then Champion, which is Karen's selection.
I missed it, which is fine, because I needed to be charged. So I chose Champion.
Yeah.
Okay. I chose Champion. I don't know, like started listening to Kanye at the beginning of when I was in high school, and he is like probably my top artist on Spotify every year. Despite who he is as a celebrity, like I think that his early work really formed who I became as I was a teenager, becoming a young adult, and listening to Champion in particular, who the kids gonna listen to. I guess me, if it isn't you, they got the dropout, keeping kids in the school. Just really like the students need a role model. They need a champion. They need to see people who look like them. This is who I want to be and who I want to provide for them as I work with kids, high schoolers, young adults, whoever they are.
Awesome. Yep, that was all, yep.
Okay, great. I want to also note that because we can't really see the slides, most of our stuff is on the handout, but we do have a couple slides that you may want to, at least email them to you. So if you want to reference a little bit more content on this identity section we're going to go into using the pre-work from your identity mapping, there are some slides in your email. Totally optional, and you have this deck that you can always reference it afterwards.
Great, thank you. So, Lisa, real quick, I'm trying to think, was cycle of socialization one of the things that was part of?
It was an optional pre-work.
It was optional.
Optional, yeah.
to be a good thing to take a look at in terms of things that you have. Anything that's talking about the ways in which we socialize or are socialized into getting a better understanding of who we are, and how our identities all play a big factor in it. Even how we even come to the idea of what an identity is. And so, part of what it is that we're going to be doing and we're leading towards today is this idea of helping you craft your vision for impact, right? What is it that I want to be able to contribute to that is going to have an impact for our young people, our community, as far as what it is that I'm going to be able to do in education? That might be sitting on the school board. That might be participating in some other way, shape, or form on an LSDMC. It may be any number of different things, but understanding your vision for how you want to have impact is where we're heading for the day. Wonderful. David, I'm going to have to figure out what my impact is going to be. Where am I starting from with that? Well, that goes back to the question that I'm going to ask you again that I started by asking you about this morning. Why are you doing this? Why? What is your why behind this? And the vision that you have for impact is going to be pretty connected to the idea about why. And your why is connected in a lot of ways to who are you? How did you come to see yourself? How did you come to think about yourselves in the way that you come to think about yourselves? Where does that come from? So one of the tools that we've provided for you to do a little bit of reflection is the identity awareness map. There are some of you who I have seen and worked with in various places who have seen this before and are doing the same thing that you were doing last time. Like, why are we doing this? Like, I've seen this, we've gone over this. I think you're doing this for a couple of reasons. Number one, you're with different people. Number two, we have gone through, I will just name, in almost the last 20 months, a global pandemic. We have gone through probably one of the most contentious presidential experiences in the last 100 years. Number three, there has been a racial reckoning in this country that has put everything into different perspectives, regardless of who you are. Just those three things alone allows us to think about sort of like, I did this probably about 2 years ago. My messages might be the same, but the way that things might play out might be very, very different for me right now. I see myself in a way that might be very, very different from right now. So I want you to think about that. As you're thinking about some of these things around messages that you've received. Some of the messages that you received in your earlier time period might be in conflict right now. Some of those messages might actually be things that have doubled down on or been more solidified for you. But what we're going to do is spend a little time reflecting on messages. Hopefully you've already done this as your free work. You spent some time thinking about these things. The ask here. The ask is to spend some time. And I want to be sure we're going to think about how do we do this in terms of groupings. So you are going to do this as a small groups.
Yeah.
You are going to do this as a small group. So I want to make sure that even in your small groups, you have a small enough sort of portion or create the dynamic that allows you to be able to have conversation with as many people as possible in your group. The ask is this. Hopefully, you've done the entire map. If you haven't, I want you to think about what are the most salient identities to you right now. By most salient identities, I mean the ones that are front and center in your mind in this moment. Maybe even extend it beyond that. As I think about my why am I doing this? Why am I taking part in this? Why am I thinking about school board school as an option? What are the three aspects of your identity that are most present for you when you think about why you are doing this? What is coming to mind? I really want to emphasize, you have the time. Spend the time actually giving a little bit more than what it is that we call this? Pageant answers, right? Do a little deeper than the pageant answer. I call this a challenge by choice activity. And the reason I do that is because some of these questions can go deeper, folks. It is not mine or ours to determine how much you have to say. This is an offering. This is an opportunity to maybe get beyond the pageant answers and think a little bit about how does this connect to my why? There was work that you did in looking at some pieces around definitions, right? Definitions. How is this all playing into what I'm looking at and what I'm thinking about in terms of messages I received and how I'm thinking about them? Remind me, Marion, how much time?
25 minutes in the group. So, yep. So you have the identity awareness map.
Question out.
This come out for me the pre-work of just sort of like, okay, some of us identifying and thinking about and writing about an identity awareness map, but then we're just leading into the lifeline. So thinking about if we're going to be talking about both of those,
Yes.
I can see myself starting to
Really good point.
go from one to the other. How do you want me, or how do you want us to separate that in the discussion? Where is it even important to us?
I don't necessarily know it's important to you because you're going to be in your group
Yeah.
talking about the life path. You can always go to be continued.
Okay.
Right? To be continued is a good way to think about this because all of this is connected in the same way that you did.
Yeah, it's reminding me that we didn't tell you all the agenda of today, but after this, you will go to the life map reflection, so it's a really, so that we're layering, all day long we're layering. And so we've done, the pageant, keep it in the pageant, but now we're doing, how is my identity connected to my why? And to David's point, like, what are those, 1 to 2 to 3 salient identities for you connected to your why of school board school? That's the level where you want to focus in this share out. And I love the to be continued because where we're going next is the lifeline share out. And that will be a little more time. And then we're going to break for lunch. And then after that, we start putting it together. What were the values that we heard during this morning? And what does that mean for our vision impact? And we'll start crafting that. And then you'll be giving each other one. And then we're going to reflect on our power as well. And, in our impact, related to our identities, all the spheres of influence we hold, and then we'll be crafting that getting to the feedback. That's how it's layering today. So that's a great question. So we just have 25 minutes, but one group is a group of 5, so it's really only 5 minutes per person. So the idea is just kind of whip around and share what's coming up for you with that. And remember, this is a space where your job as listeners is to hold that space using all of our agreements for each other. This is really vulnerable. Challenge by choice, share what works for you, and hold the space for your team to really hear where they are.
Excellent. So determine how you're going to go about that in your group in terms of who's going to share when. And we're going to 25 minutes on the clock. When you get teachers in the room, and folks who use some of these things, that's cues. There are so many different things that people use to bring people back, right? People used to hate on me so bad because I was, if you can hear my voice clap once, like, oh my God, that's so insulting. How can you do this like children? Right? And I'd be like, okay, this, and I'm just walking around and people are like, why is he doing this? Damien, like, and then people are like, what's happening? Why is it happening? Right? So there's all kinds of different things. My go-to used to be call and response. I did something called Freedom Schools for another number of years. And so, Freedom Schools was, I'll go on A, call and response. Constitution Swahili word for are you listening? I'll go. A means I am listening, and it focuses people's attention back. But in your toolkit, might come in handy wherever you might be. But these are all different ways of bringing people back. We'll have to figure out something that works for all of us, so that I don't really insult anybody by it. But We need to come back. How about that? I'm going to ask you to do something for about a minute. For about a minute, we're just going to be quiet, and I want you to reflect on what was going through your head when you were sharing. What's going through your head while you were sharing? How are you feeling? Were you okay with this level of sharing? We talked about vulnerability. Were you feeling okay as you shared? Were there certain things that you were sharing that made you feel differently in that moment? Talking about one thing was great. Talking about this was like, ooh, that's kind of scary. What were you thinking? What were you feeling as you went through your shares? Did your body react in a certain way? What we're going to do now is I'm going to ask for 2 volunteers. What you're volunteering is to share which of the identity pieces did you choose as maybe the one that you would say is the most salient to you as you think about why we are here. In that, what did you come to? What after the conversations, what is the thing that came through to you that you felt like, that's an aha for me, that's making me think maybe slightly differently, or all this did was really double down something I truly believe, that I now have more conviction about. So, it either was, aha, wow, didn't see that coming, wasn't really thinking about that before, or I'm just more entrenched in why at least I believe some things about it. 2 volunteers. Go, Brian.
Now, I didn't get to finish in the group, but the one about our own ability and disability, I shared with the group from the South. It kind of ties into all of them, but I grew up listening to stories of how my aunts and uncle were forbidden to go to certain places, or you had to get out certain times, sundown, if you ever heard of that.
Sundown, yep.
And as an adult, though, when you're born and you have some of these, I guess, carryover rules and customs and parenting, because back then, children wasn't seen or heard. So you didn't really have a voice. So what I share with the group is that I sometimes still feel like I'm looking for permission to do certain things. But with that said, the aha moment is that I think for me, as part of my why, what I want to expand on is to touch on things that I know that have permission for me to create acceptance. And so I think growing up in the era and time that I did Bible Belt, religion played a part in some of that. That was a common thing, especially for African Americans, because you were told. And I will say this, living in the Midwest, living in the South. The South is very honest about where they're standing. Right? Let's go speak to you. No. It's a little different here where it's a little kind of deception factor to me. Right? So yeah, I think that's the thing that more kids, African American kids, or people call it period, right? When you're dealing with the system and the history of it all, like, and even at this point now, that I understand more about gender, like any oppressed people needs to understand they have permission to live their greatest self. And so I think that would be, that would be part of my development.
You get on all of them, right? And again, you should, because we're interconnected. But that piece around the idea of, I feel like I was waiting for permission. I still feel like I'm waiting for permission in places. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Please pronounce your name, because I want to say it so bad, but I don't want to mess it up. Marche?
That's correct. But I think Crystal had her hand up. I think she was on her first, so I want to
did not see that, so thank you, my friend. Crystal, do you want to go?
I guess for me, honestly, if I can be transparent and vulnerable today with the entire group, I really didn't want to come here today. And I'll tell you why. These conversations, right? I'm all prepared to talk about these kids, you know, we can talk about, self, background, things I've seen, and just, even preparing, it was very triggering, what I mean? I'm still in a very serious emotional state. But through our conversation and the one identity awareness piece that sticks out for me most, especially as I was having this conversation with the group, I selected yours too, so around ability and disability, and I was sharing with the group how, it wasn't until being sort of in a new environment. I grew up going to Salem Park, and then in 5th grade, I ended up at Vine Street Elementary. And just as far as ability is concerned, that was the first place where a teacher said to me, you're smart, you're intelligent, and just how I lit up and literally walked away from that, like believing that, and still do, to this day. But it's that teacher who planted that seed. And the aha moment for me is that, I've spent a lot of time in the schools, and I know that there are lots of teachers here today. Made me think about the messaging that our kids hear, each and every day, and how I'm glad we're having these conversations because we have to be much more intentional about what it is that we say to these young folks. They truly can make or break how they feel about themselves.
Forgive me for not seeing you up front, and thank you for being able to call that out. The messaging. The messaging we get from all different places, right?
Yes.
So just as I'm coming to school, how many messages am I getting from all these different places that might be hidden? As adults, you're still getting that, right? That's not just for kids. It's not just for young people. That is happening to all of us. Hopefully we have developed skills and ability to coping skills and the ability to filter things that allow us to be able to figure out what are some of the messages we do want to take in. And I follow either the Captain America shield or the Wonder Woman bracelets. They go like, oh, that's gone, or ting, ting, not coming near me. We develop the ability to be able to do those things as we move forward. But thank you for the message about how we think about that for young people. Caitlin, we did get you last time really quick.
What are we not saying? Just what are we saying, but also what are we not saying?
Yes.
Yeah, that was quick.
That was quick, right? So loving you for that. Thank you. Mary.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you so much for that vulnerability, the honest reflections. We're layering, we're adding on the next layer, and we're moving into the lifeline reflection. And one of the big goals of this is really reflecting
literally inner space that was supposed to be about us sharing our kids' experiences there to build a more inclusive space, that was not reflected back to me. So I want to make sure that here, that is not the experience, that there is no oppression Olympics, and who you are matters, and what you share about yourself is important to the people who are receiving it. All right, so with that, Mary's going to get us started. We have 15 minutes. And again, breaking that down by how many people are in your group. Go for it.
Thank you, Lisa. All right. We know it's getting late in the day, so we want to meet everybody. So thank you so much for sharing your stories. We're going to reflect on this after lunch, and you'll have a minute to just do some independent reflection on the values that you heard and that got mirrored back to you as we move into the second part of that afternoon. So for now, enjoy lunch. Thank you, Nicole. Pleasure. Sustenance. Oh, yes. All right, welcome back to our afternoon. So we're going to reflect a little bit on the values and also just sharing your life and also your identity. How was it? I'd like to hear from just two people, and I'm going to be strict about that. What was it like to share your story and or to have your story received? Anyone? What was it like to share your story and or to have others receive your story? Yes.
So in sharing my story, I recognize that it took a lot of vulnerability from me, and just going through the process of hearing my own story is quite emotional. But it was also quite validating to know how my people not close up with you. Just affirm that level of confidence in the people and to stay focused on our purpose and our mission.
Thank you. I heard affirmed, it's validating, even if it's vulnerable and emotional and a little difficult to do, help you connect to that purpose. Thank you. So, we're asking again, what's my why? And your why is connected to your story and your purpose and your values. So thank you so much for sharing that. Okay, one more person. Yes.
I would say that in sharing my story, it I really gained a lot of my power.
Things and lives too.
Yeah, like I gained a lot of power, and then also realizing how truly authentic I can be if I share my story. And then also, and just like some aha moment, and just realizing like damn, like I went through all of this, and I'm here, and I can really truly impact somebody, and the power that and the support that I have from these four strangers. Just imagine if I do that kind of thing, times 100. So it just gave me that power to be like, I'm really truly understanding my vibe, and I'm getting closer and closer to what I'm going to do. So.
That's good. Thank you. I love that you brought up power. That's something we're going to examine really soon. The next big thing coming, where we're going to look at where are those places we have our power. And I just love how you just there's power in telling that story and saying it and having other spirits out there, and that's beautiful. Thank you. Okay, so I hope you also were able to reflect on some values that have guided your journey. And so we know that not everybody processes through listening to whole group and through having small group sharing. So we want to give a moment for everybody to just have some quiet reflection where you can lift up the values that maybe are more popping for you as a result of sharing your story. So on the back of the values bank, there's a little sheet that says values reflection, and it's just a place for you to kind of synthesize what you're taking away about your values having shared your story. So I'm going to give you just it'd be pretty quick, so you don't have to answer each question, but answer whatever resonates for you as you look at the questions. It's on the back of the value bank. We're going to give you about 4 minutes to just jot down whatever comes up for you there.
people hear the phrase, how do I know? The next thing they say is what? How do I know what?
The key really isn't to know what. The key is to know why. Because when you know your why, you have options on what your what can be. For instance, my why is to inspire people to walk in purpose. My what is stand-up comedy. My what is writing books. My what can be going out with some friends to eat. In fact, another what that is moving me towards my why is a web series that we have out now called Break Time. So every Wednesday at 3 o'clock, you should subscribe to the channel. We do a series called Break Time on YouTube. So 3 o'clock, we drop a new episode. One episode in particular, I'm about to show you a clip to. We were in Winston-Salem. So Break Time, this is how it works. I travel the country, I do stand-up comedy, probably an hour and a half at an event. And in the middle of my show, I'll just sit down and start talking to the audience. And funny just happens. Or I'll meet somebody who's really interesting. So I met this one guy, and he said that he teaches music at a school. I was like, all right, you teach music, and he's saying, and then I'm just gonna show you a clip. Check it. So you're a musical director.
Yes, sir.
All right, so let me get a couple bars like Amazing Grace. Can you do the first part of that? Go ahead. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. That bro could sing. You know what I'm saying? All right. Now, what you give me the version is if your uncle just got out of jail, you got shot in the back when you was a kid. I'm just saying, let me see the little version real quick. If you know the version I'm talking about, just see if that exists. Let me see what you got. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. Right now I'm sorrow's blind, but now I see. Here's the thing. First time I asked him to sing, he knew what he was doing. The second time I asked him to sing, he knew why he was doing it. When you know your why, your what has more impact because you're walking in or towards your purpose.
So, I want you to just take a second, think about what you've heard. The idea about your why, and where that comes together with this idea of purpose. So, I'm gonna look for 3 folks this time. 3 folks. What is the underlying message that you think that Mike Jr. was trying to get across? I'm saying underlying message because folks have all kinds of feelings about how the setup of that went. And I've experienced that when we've actually used this video. All kinds of feelings about sort of like how it was and what he used to get it prompted. And I get that, and I understand that. The thing that I want to get to with you is, what is the underlying message that he's trying to send us about the connection between our why and our purpose?
colloquial, it adds a little bit of soul. And I don't mean that from an ethnic standpoint. I mean that there's a depth to what you are trying to convey based on understanding why you are trying to convey.
Thank you. One, two more.
Say, I think saying that basically reading and understanding something will help determine the effort, the energy, the persistence, and perhaps even the impact.
Effort, energy, persistence, impact. Those are the things that are coming through when you understand sort of like your purpose and your why.
Something that, that Damien said made me think of the values exercise we just had us do in connection with the song, which is anything that you're gonna face all this persistence. It's something that's hard to change, right? So you need to be pretty centered in what you value and believe that it's hard won for you in order to be fighting for that. So knowing why you're doing something gives you direction for whatever that thing is that you're going to do. It's not a coincidence that like songs Amazing Grace that they're saying.
Thank you.
If you had
Four, go ahead. I'm still trying to think of
Okay. I was also just gonna add that when you know your why, you are able to strategize about what and how, like the delivery system like Amy was talking about. And that's the kind of thinking that we need, Alex was talking about, to go up against systems. If you don't have a strategy, you can't go up against a system that has, it's there on purpose. It's been embedded in history. It's got all kinds of ways to be successful and confuse people about what its true purpose is and like get to its aims through covert and subverted means. So knowing your why allows you that metacognition that you need.
Thank you.
Hey, David, can I add one more?
Sure, go ahead, Dave.
What was interesting to me, and I've seen this video, he wasn't given anything else except the prompt. Like his own physical faculties and things at his disposal didn't change, but what came out did. Right? So that's what I feel like a why adds. It's a little, it's that seasoning. You know what I mean? Like the hot sauce. The salt, right? But I mean, he didn't change. He wasn't given anything else except that why, and it was really just a prompt of a why that he already had. That's what made it resonate.
I think that is so poignant to talk about. All we got was a prompt, right? And there are different realities out there for people on, right? That prompt was enough about his reality to know where to go with that particular piece. That prompt might not have worked for other people, right? It may not have elicited the same response. But in this person, in this moment, that prompt got him to dig deeper depth about what was actually there for him. And he gave us something in a way that was supposed to be indicative of, here's what this means to me on a much deeper level than what I was even asked for, maybe. So thank you. Thank you all for those things. This idea of combination of purpose and your why. Chris said a couple minutes ago that the idea behind being able to marry your purpose with what it is you are actually doing in your life, if what I'm doing is living into my purpose, that is a combination that is optimal, right? I will dare say it is a privilege to be able to think your work is your purpose, and you are living into that. I would say that is a privilege. Not all of us have the ability to be able to do that. to be able to live into. So when you find that connection, not only might it be rare, but it is something to be now. I want us to think about the moments where I've been able to really live into purpose in things I'm doing. And it's not something we're going to ask you to report, to think back and sort of share out, but I want you to think about where have been the moments in your life where you really feel like I am living into my purpose right now? And what do you believe that that has yielded in terms of the impact that you made? When I'm living into my purpose. The alignment also of your values is something else that Chris shared in that minute. So I'm going to tell you about a moment in my life and in my career where living into my values probably was one of the most important and simple things that I needed to do and what it resulted in. Show of hands, who has ever been, I'm a model this because this is a vulnerable moment, who's ever been asked to resign or fired from a job? And thank you for sharing and being able to be in that moment. My values, my purpose, all came into play in a moment in my career where I was being asked to do something that did not lead into my values. I was working for an organization that no longer exists in this community and being asked to see and value something that did not align with A, what I was told we were going to do. Because alignment of words and actions matter. That's a value for me. If I can't trust you because you do not align with your actions and your words, that is a value for me. If we went in, I thought we had a shared understanding of where we're going and clarity as to where we were headed, but you are acting in ways that do not align with those things, with that shared understanding, nor with the clarity that I thought I had. When those things are out of alignment, when those things were out of alignment, it caused me to have to make a decision about whether or not this is where I want to be, this is how I want to engage, and am I going to follow what it is that I've been told I need to do in this moment, or am I going to do what it is my purpose and my values call me to do? There are moments where that will be a case. There are moments where it's going to be so important to know what it is you value, what it is your purpose, and why you are in the places where you are in. Because life will test you. People will test you. Systems will test you. And if you don't have the clarity that you need about where you stand in those moments, it is easy to get sucked into things that you don't find yourself in situations like, why am I doing this? How many people have ever asked themselves that question? You have been like, why am I doing this? That's a pivotal moment to understand your why. If you can go back in that moment and go, I know why I'm doing this, then it's grounded in purpose. It's grounded in where I want to go and where I want to be. Those are the moments that you need to understand your why more than anything else. In the situation that I was in, there were a number of things that were happening. And we're going to use what it is that you just got as a way of taking you through that process. What you have right now, we call the identity power map. In some ways, it might look very similar to the identity awareness map that we gave you earlier. It is different in a couple of different ways. It's not asking specifically for you to think about the messages that you got, but those messages are probably embedded in the ways in which you're going to respond to the questions that are there. So the power map will ask you to think about all these different aspects of identity. Same ones that you actually did with the awareness today. It's going to ask you to think about, how do I identify in this moment? And you have a number of things to build off of in terms of how it is you identify. You've thought about that this morning as you did your identity awareness. You've had time to reflect on a number of different tools that you had as part of your free work. So thinking about, how do I identify in these areas that are listed there? How am I perceived? How am I perceived? And that's guesswork on some level. But we get messages. We constantly get messages that might give us some insight into how we might be perceived. So I want you to think about that. As a result of that, what do you believe that your relative power and or privilege is based upon that particular identity? What do you believe your relative power and or privilege to be? And then most important of all of those, why do you believe that's the case? Why do you believe that to be so? So you're going to spend a little time going through and doing that. I would suggest maybe use the same ones that you picked as that were most salient in terms of your identity awareness. Go through the same ones there. 5 minutes. What I'll share with you in terms of my own journey that might help you. And I've already got the second jacket. Thank you. And I'll cross my eyes. So, I identify as Black, not African American, because I was born in 1964, and that was just Black. It wasn't necessarily African American. I am perceived as Black. My relative power and privilege, I will say, is somewhat oppressed. Actually, I think I've moved to more of a state position. Why I believe that's so, I think it has a lot to do with mitigating factors when I think about what it is that my actual identity was. Yes, I am a Black man. I identify and am perceived as a Black man. I said that my relative power and privilege are aspects of who it is that I am, are more neutral because of my age. I have reached a certain age where my level of competency, my level of competence, and my level of resilience have put me in a place where the level of oppression that I might feel is not necessarily something that I do feel. In the situation that I was describing to you before, my level of competence, my level of confidence, and my level of resilience were seen as threats. They were not seen as things that would be useful in that moment in time and where I was. I was questioning the decisions of people who have more formal authority and power than I had. And so my perceived level of power, what I perceive my level of power to be, may have been less than what I thought it was. Or maybe it just was what it was. And that more formal structures bear it out. What were the factors and the things that went into why it is that there was a decision that was made about asking me to resign my role? Did it have to do with race? Did it have to do with where I was in my own level of professionalism? The thing about racism is you never know. You never know. So then, as you go through hitting the examples, the ones that you talked about in terms of the salience of your own experience, you're giving them how long? You got about enough, 4 minutes. 5 minutes.
Yeah.
This shouldn't take all that long anyway.
Yeah, more time.
The thing that's going to take a long period of time is, why do you believe this is so?
A song from the Congo, which is where my family is from. And the title is called Diva, which means the just talking about like approaching life, reaching out for things, believing that then you already have it, and you have already achieved it, and you have already lived it. You can reach out and just grab it. So that's my
Thank you. So what's gonna happen now is you're gonna spend some time back in your groups. In your groups, you're gonna be there for about 15 minutes. In that 15 minutes, what I want you to do is share what you can in terms of what it was like, what it's like going through this process. Maybe taking a lot. Maybe again, what's the identity marker for you that is most salient to you right now? And just maybe taking that one. Everybody gets the opportunity to do at least that one. If you have more time, do another. But everybody gets to at least do that one. As I said, being able to sort of check some boxes around the first 3 or 4, but really digging into that idea about why do you believe that you possess the level of power and privilege that you think you do. So, 15 minutes in your groups. We'll let you know when that time is up. Go for it. It's like a big check. What is happening? What is happening right now? What's that look? I'm so sorry. I know. It's like, I'm so sorry. We've been going over how we're gonna bring people back home. I'm just trying to figure out which way is gonna be the one that does not destroy people in the middle of what they're talking about. Okay. Thank you for being able to bring it back. I hope your conversations were. One of my least favorite words was interesting, so I'm not going to say insightful. Your conversations were insightful. We're going to go with 3 folks. Maybe somebody from here, somebody from here, and somebody from here. The question really is, what was the thing that you found to be most enlightening about yourself as you went through this process? What is the thing that you found to be most enlightening about yourself as you went through this process? Let me help. What's the thing you found most surprising about your identity or your idea about power? What did you find most surprising about your idea about power? Or, as we said before, what did you feel like only reconfirmed here as you went through this process? What was reconfirmed for you? Thank you.
I would say, so I feel like a big conversation in our group was the topic of race. And one thing that I guess my aha moment was that power is fluid. So I bounced back and forth between somewhat oppressed, and then neutral. Like I had no idea what was going on. And we all kind of agreed that it depends on what space we're in. So me being a first generation college student, when I go back home, like to my family and my peers from back home, I have a lot of privilege. You know, I got a chance to go to college, I, have a nice job, et cetera, and then when I come back to Cincinnati, right, and yeah, I have this nice job, but does anybody listen to my flags up at the table? No. So here I am again, like with this fluidness and how people perceive me and the power that I'm experiencing for that they'll listen to.
Thank you. So, power has to do with where am I? Who am I with? What are the conditions of the circumstances of the places that I might find myself? And then there's a fluidity to it based upon that. Anybody over here? Go for it, brother Abby.
You know what, David? What's interesting is that like several years ago, I got a chance to do something very similar with you in terms of this reflection. And I think we even had a similar kind of paper that we filled out. And as I juxtaposed my paper this time with the one from a few years ago, few years ago, I was like, oppressed. I'm oppressed in everything. And now it's like, no, I've benefited from being a male. And I had to go through that self-reflection and be vulnerable with myself, so to speak, and straightforward with myself to announce that I'm privileged in certain ways and then oppressed in certain ways. And so I've kind of shifted along the spectrum now. And even as it relates to being black, as we were talking about in our group, like I think I've shown up in certain spaces where I'm privileged being black, particularly where there are allies or advocates for black people, and they want to propel you. So it was like I messed myself through certain systems and got to where I am now because I am black. And so I acknowledge that there's some growth there. That's my aha moment. Is the growth that I've had from several years ago to now.
And just what shifted in your world, in your life, the places that you are, what you recognize about yourself, those. Oh, thank you. Marche.
Yeah. I think the big aha moment for me, I guess two things. I think with our group, I realized that Daniel and I have a lot of similarities versus like in cases in our group. So that's something that resonated in me. And just being at the table and being able to share like these experiences, like again, another aha moment, like, hey, I can really have a conversation with these people and I feel good, you know, and I feel like, you know, or feel uncomfortable. But then also I realized too, kind of like, brother, I don't understand is that I just realizing and shifting between oppressed and somewhat oppressed, like neutral. Because like you said, we have these moments when we go back home and we love and you know and we're privileged and we see that because not everybody that I grew up with or my family had that same opportunity. But then when I come to a different room and it's not like that, you know, that's also like recognizing in myself like, oh wow, like there's a whole different experience out there in the world that's so vastly different, but at the same time it shapes who we are, and this has shaped me who I am. So
Thank you. So you've had an opportunity to do a little reflection on power, privilege, how you perceive that power and privilege based off of some of the things around your identity. So now we're going to think about, and Lisa's going to guide us through thinking about, what does this mean in terms of the impact you believe you can have? And as you begin to think about, so like, what is your own vision for impact? Lisa.
Yeah, so we want to talk a little bit about like what impact you want to make, and then those like the privileges that you had, and how you tie those things together. And so Mary and David were saying like, what's a story that we could tell from my experience? And so thinking of one more from when I was on the school board, very early on, I was leaving a meeting with Alex Kuhn, who's a more tenured board member. Some of you may know Alex. And he said to me, okay, Lisa, right now you're using the spaghetti on the wall technique, right? Where you're like throwing everything out there to see what sticks. And he's like, you know, that's one way to do this work, because everything you're raising is important, but it's really hard to focus, right? Like it's hard for us as a board to focus, it's hard for the admin to focus, and so like you might not be making the impact you want to make. And so his suggestion was, like, what are those 3 to 5 things that you want to do? So if you only had one term, you only had 4 years, what's that handful of things that you think can really change opportunities for kids in CPS? So that took me back, obviously, to my why. Why had I run? What are my values that I'm bringing into this work? What do I really want to get done? And so that reflection was like, okay, well, my whole platform I ran on was equity. And the things that we were going to have to change about the system, whether they were actual systemic problems or structural problems, to get a more equitable school system. And so I wrote down like 6 different things. There was like writing equity policy, expanding preschool seats, rethink our neighborhood schools, revamping our enrollment policies to be more equitable, and then also expanding opportunities for AP courses and gifted courses. And so those were some of the things I said, if we can get these things done, it'll open up opportunity for kids. So I was like a broken record here, where like, if we want more equity in outcomes, we have to have more equity in access and opportunity. Right, so there was so much focus on these inequitable outcomes, without kind of tracing it back to what were the opportunities that kids had to have if we were going to have more equitable outcomes. And so just taking one of those things I listed was AP courses. So in Student Achievement Committee, as a committee I've ever done, I asked what I thought was a really interesting question. I said, can I see the AP scores broken down by school and by race? I was told only 3 of our high schools offer AP classes. Anyone want to make a guess of what?
One and a half.
One of those is called Clark Montessori
Montessori.
and SCPA. Anyone want to say why you knew those were the 3 schools? They're mostly white, they're not Title I, so they're the wealthiest, whitest schools in our district, right? So, okay, so right there, my question was, what does this say to the kids at all of our other schools about what we believe that their ability is? Right? And like, why was it important to have AP even offered at all these schools? I mean, obviously, like there's this equity and access problem, right? But also because I knew that there was data that showed that just being in an AP class, whether or not you pass the test, if you go on to college, those kids go through college at higher rates. So like the fact that we weren't even giving kids access to AP courses was a problem. So this is a question of equity and access. So I asked the same question that I asked in many different situations when we saw these kind of problems, where I said, okay, so we need to then admit that like 1 of 2 things is true in CPS. Either they don't believe kids of color are as smart as white kids, or there's something wrong about our system, we have to change it. Like, which one is it? And now, the great thing about CPS, I will say, is that in every single situation, the district administrators I'm with absolutely believe in our kids, but our system was not set up to reflect that. And so, going back to the question of power and privilege, right? So, hopefully you all watched my video before you came today. And one of the things I talked about was Chris Nellis, my fellow board member, pointed out the privilege I have since I'm perceived as a white woman. And that I could say something like that in the Student Achievement Committee meeting because I have that privilege. Because I'm not going to be seen as, in his words, an angry black man, or in my case, an angry black woman to say that. And so if I had that privilege, I knew I needed to use it to disrupt the system as it is. So the end of this story is after lots of work, we tasked our administration with figuring out what's the problem here, what are the structural issues in place, how do we get past those? And so by the end of that calendar, that school year, our administration worked with principals, teachers, and kids to offer AP classes at every one of our high schools. It is not perfect, but it was progress. And the whole point here was aligning what is it that I know I value, but what is it that is a stated value in our district, and what do we have to change about how our system is set up in order to open up access to more kids. And I think tying into what David was just talking about is, again, in the situation I was in, knowing what my privilege was, and then the power that I had as a school board member to make that change.
So, now we start connecting the dots. What have we done this morning? We laid some ground rules in terms of how we want to engage with one another. We talked about those ways of being that we wanted to experience. We also did some digging into and thinking about messages that we received in terms of our own identities. We thought about those things, we pondered those things, we shared those things with our folks in our small groups. We then talked about some values. We thought about our values and how our values connect to those things, and we actually linked that to the idea of purpose. What does it mean to actually think about what my purpose is? And now we just had a conversation about the idea of power and privilege. And so the goal behind this is to start connecting the dots, because all this adds up to something. So Lisa just shared around the idea of what is the impact I can have. What happens when I take all those different pieces of the way that I perceive myself, the ways that other people might perceive me, what it is I believe my power and privilege to be, what I know to be true about and aware about sort of who I am and how I identify. How does all that begin to roll up into, so with all of those things, what do I want my impact to be? What do I want to do? What do I want to be true about my service? And I say service very intentionally. My service on behalf of kids and families. Or, even if it's not in the school world, what do I want to be true about my impact on community? And so that's where we're going.
All right, so the rest of our time today, we're going to have you start drafting what we call your vision for impact statement. So, your vision for impact statement has two parts to it. It's the specific impact you want to make and the seat you want to make it from. So when we say specific, we don't mean like, I want to build more equitable school systems. Like, that is huge. So that's not specific enough. So we want you to really think. So narrowing it down to like, I want to decrease discipline disproportionality by race. So that might be the thing I want to do. And then we want you to think about in what seat could you do that from. So if I took that same example, you might say, and I'm going to do that by running for school board in 2023 and revamping our equity, our discipline policies. Or you might say, same thing, you might do that by, I'm going to research best practices and discipline from other school districts and present a white paper to the policy committee. Right? Like, you could take the same thing you want to do and accomplish it from lots of different seats. But this is what we want you to start thinking about. What is that specific thing you're going to put your energy toward, and how do you think you're going to get it done? I'm going to read you a couple of examples from past people, because one of the things we really want to be clear on is like, this isn't an exercise for exercise sake. We really want this to be what you are going to go and do. One of the things you hear us say over and over and over again is School is there are lots of issues in our community. We are not learning just to learn. We are learning to figure out our role in helping solve those problems. So, a couple of ones. We can do this in lots of ways. One way that a lot of people have chosen is by deepening their day job. Right? So, it could be that you're already in the right seat, but you're going to do something deeper in your day job. So, one vision for impact. Some of you know Kristen Sterling. So, Kristen was in last year's class, and hers was, as a principal, I will provide teachers and staff with the education needed in order to equip them with the necessary tools to acknowledge and understand their own biases and ways of thinking, in hopes that they will become better at understanding the students who face them on a daily basis. Okay, so the thing that she wants to do is really helping people understand their own biases in her school, because that'll impact, obviously, how they then interact with their kids. Now, one thing here is, how did she say she was going to do this? Principal. Kristen is currently not a principal. She is a teacher. So when you think about your vision for impact, it doesn't have to be the thing I'm doing tomorrow. It could be where I want to go. So as some of you may know, because of this reflection process that Kristen did during last year's class, she said she had wanted to be a principal since the day she started teaching, but it was this process that got her to apply. She got accepted to an master's in principal program, and she's already started on that. So that's what we're hoping this process will help you do. One more we wanted to read, because we're also wanting to give an example from your volunteer work, right? So Marcia, you tell in class 2, hers was empowering African American high school students and parents to expand their life options and leave a prosperous legacy by exercising their civil rights and entrepreneurship leadership. So that was a pretty big one that she wanted to do. She kept refining it. She knew what she wanted to do was make sure, in kind of layman's terms, that African American kids and their parents were voting. So just yesterday, it was announced that Marcia is one of, I'm going to read it, the United Way Black Empowerment Work Street grant recipients. So hers is called, finding it here. So she just has $10,000, a $10,000 grant to start building My Vote Does Matter program, Connecting for Impact, teaching and inspiring Black voters and future voters to participate in the democratic process. All right, so the reason we're giving you those examples, again, could be something that you're already in the right seat, could be the seat you want to work towards in your day job, could be how you're going to spend your time volunteering. Now, one other thing we mentioned night one that I want to bring up here is you're starting to put pen to paper right now today. What you write today may or may not be what you present to us in March. we're reflecting on our vision for impact statement every single session. So as you're learning more content, but also more about yourself, you may find that what you write down today, you are more determined than ever to do when you present this in March. Or you might find what you thought today that was the thing you wanted to do is not actually. And that is okay. So remember night one, we talked about how one of our principles here at Schoolwork School is not just okay to change your mind, it's expected. So as you're learning more, that might happen. The whole goal here, though, is that by purposeful reflection, by the time you leave here, you'll feel really confident that you know how you're going to put all this into practice, and that you're going to have this team of people to do it with you. So Mary's going to give you some directions for how to get started. I will pass that.
Yes, and we already talked about. Yeah, very good. So you all have a packet on your table that I brought around just a minute ago, and so that has the little handout that you will use to reflect. And, all right. You will have, before you read the document, let me explain how it's going to work. So we're going to give y'all, this is going to be a nice chunk of time, 25 minutes, and then there's also a 10-minute break. So we have like 35 minutes, and you can take a break before, during, or after. But we're going to play the playlist. We're going to have 35 minutes, but really do independent time. And to take a good, pull all those dots together, as David said, and start working on your first draft. When we come back from that, we will get in your home teams again, and you all will each go around and share your first draft, and then ask your group questions that you're grappling with. So I'm not sure if we should do this or this, or is this specific enough, so you all have that kind of input time. After that, we'll have another time where you will redraft based on the input, and then we're going to share them up on whiteboards, and everybody gets to read everybody's and react to it, and then you have a really awesome, and you have like your whole team's input on it that you get to take with you as you make your next presentation. When I say really awesome, I don't mean like you're getting to the perfect final draft. I mean you're going to have awesome feedback rounds so that you have lots of great ideas and thought reflections to help you take it to the next level beyond this day. Okay? And then that's going to take us out of our day, and then we'll close out. So we're going to get any questions about that? Cool? Okay. So you have 35 minutes total. That includes a break. So do what you need to do. We're going to turn on the music.
Outside if you want, however,
Spread out. But really try to give yourself that independent thought time knowing that you will be collaborating right after. And if you guys finish before that and everybody's ready, we'll come back together. We'll give you time to. Now remember, you don't have to have this finalized. This is a first start. So even if you didn't get all the way there, that is okay. We did listen to a couple songs. I think we heard 5 on the playlist, so we're going to have people share. But we do want to ask you just one sentence. Just a quick brief, why did you pick this song? Because we want to make sure we get to all 5.
Yeah, this will be the lightning round, and I also love that like you can tell whose song is playing because they're like perk up, they're like bopping their heads, yeah. So the first one we heard was DNA by Kendrick Lamar. I think Marche, that was your choice.
Yeah. So just real quick, I think it just embodies like what Black people go through all the time, and just knowing that in my DNA, like it was rooted in it, like it's a lot of pain, it's a lot of struggle, it's a lot of triumph, it's a lot of resilience. And when I listen to that song, it gives me so much grief and power to like, yeah, I got this in my back, my little back pocket, and I'm struggling, and I have struggled, but I'm also, I don't want to say bitch, but I'm that woman. I mean, I have to tell myself every day, and like, it's just like, this is so strong. So that's why I feel that song.
Awesome. Cool. And then we heard Superwoman. Is that Jackie? Yeah.
That one was mine. It really, listening to the title of that song, not coming from a place of Superwoman syndrome, like we have to carry it all, but I think the choices we make, no matter where we're situated in life, or what position we have, put one foot in front of the other to get to a certain place. So.
Love it. Thank you. Chris, yours was up next, Broken Clocks. This is a
It's just such a good song. It's like just like a silly little love song. I just got engaged, so that's
I love it. We're bringing our person in. Yes. And then Damien, we heard doing it again. Another roots picked. Yeah.
The very first line is bleeding, rising about it, and flames like a phoenix. So there's something really redemptive about the entire song that when you listen to all the lyrics sort of reflect all of that idea of redemption and resurrection almost, and that's really inspiring.
And then Mary, you brought us home with I Got a Feeling, which, fun fact, when I worked at United Way, we did it was when flash mobs were really popular. I remember doing a choreographed dance to this on some news station. So I don't remember all of it. I know there was a lot of this kind of thing. It was very basic, but yes.
So the reason why I chose that song is I'm an elementary school teacher. I teach second grade, and anytime I hear that song, I kind of like you. I just want to bust out a movement. I want to get the kids up, just really getting excited. And so for me, it's my get up song. It gets me excited because right now it's excitement.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Well done. Lightning round. Okay. We are about to move into our kind of sharing and getting input from our classmates, and Elise is going to give us a little more context on the group aspect of this. Okay. So we just need some individual time to think about your own personal vision for impact statement. We're about to put you back in your home teams to get some feedback. One thing we want to ground each other in, though, is that the beauty of being part of a coalition is you do not have to do it all, right? What we're asking you to do is think about what is my piece, and even just in this room, if 19 people do their piece, and when we think about the greater coalition at School Board School of nearly 80 people doing their piece, you can see the huge impact we can have for kids in our community. So I know for me personally, it can feel really overwhelming sometimes when I think about all of the things that are happening in the world and all of the things that need to be changed to have a more just and equitable society to live in. And so bringing it back to, I don't have to solve it all. That is the beauty of being part of this coalition. Okay, so this is where you're going to have a chance to then share with the other people in your group, get some feedback from them on how yours is going, but also you could be listening for places that there might be overlap. And you all could help accelerate each other's work. All right? Thank you, Lisa. And similarly to that, if you were stuck somewhere, if you were like, I'm not sure what the seat should be, or I'm not sure how to be specific with this thing I have, this is a great chance for me to get that input and collaboration from your team as well. So use this time, however it will help you with what you were grappling with and or where you want to get. So, okay, so we are going to give you actually 50 minutes. So we're going to go till a minute or two after 4. And so in our group of 5, you guys have 10 minutes per person. This is our last team kind of sharing session of the day. So, do what you will with the timekeeper role, but try to keep it to 10 minutes a person for the group of 5 and 11, 12 minutes a person for the group of 4. And by person, I mean share and then have a discussion on your team with whatever you need to get out of it. We do have some prompts for you on the session guide of listen as they share. Was it specific? What were your thoughts on the seat they could do it from? Did you hear their why in it? So on this one that has the little, the one that has the hands on it, and you've got first thing in the morning that has the prompts, some kind of question prompt and listening prompts are on that for you. And that is on the last page, the vision for statement, vision for impact statement feedback. All right? So then after we do that, you're going to have 5 minutes to rewrite, and then we're going to put them up on boards, and you get to read everybody's, and that's going to take some out. Any questions about this next part? Okay, let's do it. And that's your last one for today, but not forever, because you will have access to these.
Yeah, we are. Okay.
Okay. All y'all are just doing what we asked you to do. Just doing what we asked you to do. Take a really good look. It's going to be important because the thing that we're going to be asking you just to think about is just some quick ideas. Because we only got a few minutes. Quick ideas. Is there a theme that's popping out for you? Sometimes that theme might be a couple words or phrase jumping up to you more frequently than others. Or is there something in particular that is resonating for you as you're looking at these? theme, something you see enough of that says, hey, there's something we can actually connect to here? Come on. So, are we coming around this way? So, Trisha, Damian, Kendra.
Oh, and maybe it's like when you buy a red car and then you notice every red car. But like for me, I think my role is naturally to be a principal in a CPS school, but the idea is to have the school be like a hub of resources. I only say that to say there's a lot of things here to talk about connecting community with schools, like a lot of them.
Yep.
And I know that we talk about CPS does this, but my experience in those schools is, do we really? And if we really did this and did this well, would we be seeing some of the issues we see? There's a lot of connecting community to schools.
Thank you, Trish. Damian.
Something similar in each one of these, there's a desire to increase access in something.
Kendra.
I definitely agree with Mrs. Damian as well as Mr. But with the other pieces that I recognize, providing an agency and always put in control for the students and themselves.
Agency for students and families, having voice. Anything that you found surprising or anything that you found inspiring?
I find that number one, I'm pretty excited that you and I are on the same page because we didn't know each other when we first started, but I felt this connection with her, and we kind of vibe off of our, wanting to share resources and accessibility. So I think that it's a common theme is that we can connect to one person and we connect to one other person here to get something off the ground.
That's one of those like, I'm just gonna put this down. Robert is done. Thank you very much. Kind of deal. Anybody else? Inspiring.
I feel like I found my people.
Yeah.
And that's not a pageant answer, that's not like a BS answer, it's really like, these are questions that like, I'm often thinking about, that I get frustrated with, that I feel like I'm coming up against the wall, and I'm like, you know what, I can only control what is in the four walls of this classroom, but there's so many other bigger things that are happening, and to be in a room with people who are like thinking about these things, and that I can have conversations with, to be like, here's how I'm feeling, how do I now take this and move beyond just being pissed off about it and like do something about it.
And figuring out what is my part of it and how do I let other people have their part of it. All right? Damian.
You guys have helped me to break down barriers of trust.
Breaking down barriers of trust and help them specifically to break down barriers of trust. And thank you for naming that up front. And thank you for coming back at the end and letting us know that something might have shifted or changed.
We love you.
Marseille, last comment.
I'm sorry I have to go in there, but I'm like super like excited and have been excited about this particular session because this is kind of what I've been looking for. You know what I mean? I felt like I didn't know what that was. You know what I mean? Like I have my friends that I can do this with, but with a group of people that are doing the same work has been so instrumental, and me like facing my fears of like I have this thing, this talent, and this gift that I want to give, and I feel like this class has given me the space to like face my fears and just do it. So.
Excellent. Thank you all for what you shared there. Thank you all for what you shared out here.
I am like literally back there crying, so I'm just like, okay, we'll sit together and what's going next? You all are amazing, and like this is, it's all hard, right? Like this work we all want to do is hard, and there's some days where, whatever we all, I was in the office for the first time on Monday since March 2020, so sometimes I feel like I'm like in my bedroom working away at my time called the Mary Ronan Education Center. So Mary Ronan will be our expert guest talking about from the administration's point of view, what do we do? And then Rick Williams and Eileen Cooper Reed are past school board presidents. So that's our lineup there. Okay, we talk about it's always important to do the pre-work. For this one, let me just say, like, you gotta do this pre-work. Almost the entire, like, all of the objectives are really being hit in the pre-work. So we have a whole bunch of readings for you to do. Most of them are really short, but there are things like, what are the sunshine laws? What are the 5 reasons you can go into executive session? We have you reading that beforehand because, like, it's a waste of your time for you to put a PowerPoint slide up and be like, here are the 5 days, we go here. That is not a good use of our time. So we have you read all that beforehand so that we can have these experts talk about the sunshine laws and their experience. So you can ask them questions. And then what we did is we recorded modules where they talk through most of the objectives that we have for this session. And so we're going to ask you to watch those modules. Heads up, we've already launched that folder because there's like over 2 hours worth of modules. Do not wait until the last minute where you have to sit down and watch 2 hours straight of modules. How Nicole built these is that they're like bite-sized chunks. So after each kind of one objective we talk about, Nicole has built in a check for understanding for you to like answer a few questions, make sure you understood what that module is about. You can pause there, come back to it another day, go on to watch the next one, totally up to you. But just so you know, that whole session is all conversation. And that conversation is completely driven by the questions you've written. So I know we say a lot what you get out of school board schools, what you put into it, and this one, like, if you don't come with a question, there will be nothing to talk about. Like, it is literally all driven by your questions, all right? So that is that session. And then the next one is we have to go on the 11th, we have that session. The following Monday, we're taking our first field trip. It'll be a virtual field trip. So a virtual field trip to the board's board business meeting. Okay, so I know everybody's already on Phyllis's list. She'll send you out instructions for how to log on. Log on at 6:30. You'll watch that meeting. The following weekend, we get together. We get to debrief it with Carolyn Jones. And then the rest of that session, we talk about asset mapping. And Nicole leads that session with Emma Shirey from Xavier University's Community Building Institute. So that is that session. One quick thing. We really try not to have sessions back to back. But I just wanted to explain, like we always say, we always try to tell you why we did things. The weekend after that, the 25th, was supposed to be the Neighborhood Summit. So most of you probably know about the Neighborhood Summit, but like, our facilitators were going to be at the Neighborhood Summit. Nicole and I were going to be leading a session at the Neighborhood Summit. Most of you were probably going to, and then we just found out, because of COVID, there's no Neighborhood Summit. So, it's a total bummer, but that's why these sessions we had to do back to back, because the following weekend was the Neighborhood Summit. So that's why I got that. One other resource we want to make sure you know about is on School Board School's website. If you go to School Board School/election, we have made an election resources page. So what we realized was there was nowhere where you could find like information on all of the CPS candidates, on school board elections in general, so we created it. And you'll find there that we created a candidate guide. So all of the candidates, over there, there's very lot of them, all of the candidates responded with their answers to questions that we think are really important for you to know before you go vote for someone. So you can download the guide there. We also are holding a candidate forum on Thursday night. So go to the website there, you can sign up for the Eventbrite, it's a virtual forum, and you can hear from the candidates yourself, answers to some of our questions. Jasmine Houston from our first class is going to moderate that session for us. So go should definitely check that out. And then this is one of those times where we say, like, one of our goals at School Board School is for you all to spread what you are learning to your networks. So let your friends, families, colleagues who live in CPS know about the guide, about the forum coming up, spread the word to them. The other thing I'll say too is, I know I heard over here like Brian joking about how you got a job, but we don't joke about that because it's so true. One of the things that we did not really anticipate happening at School Board School, but it's happened really often, is that people change jobs. So all of this like really deep reflection, lots of folks end up saying, I think I want to do something else all day. So if you haven't signed up yet for the Facebook page, or if you haven't checked out the community hub, so on part of our website, it's just for you all, just for members of School Board School. We have a jobs board there, and then on the Facebook page, people post jobs all the time. It's a great way, if you're thinking about maybe changing jobs, to see what's out there. So I know Annie just posted 2 jobs on Friday. So definitely check that out if you have not done that yet.
And Annie also should have included your email in like a members newsletter that goes out every month. So that is just for classes 1 through 4 that has very similar jobs, opportunities, etc. So that is not our general newsletter. That is just for you all with those kind of resources.
That's what we have coming up. Any questions about what's coming up here?
Did we want to mention just like the time on the board meeting if
Oh yeah, I was
it
good.
goes-
Okay.
mhm.
So yes, so when we get to the board business meeting, last year we took a field trip to a board business meeting. As you may remember, if you watched those board meetings, they went on for like 5 hours. And so we just want to be clear that our expectation is you will stay no more than 2 hours. You are welcome to stay on longer if that board meeting goes longer, but that is our expectation, that you would watch it for that 2 hours. You can get a good understanding of what's going to be happening. So that's the next couple sessions. The other thing to know is that because those sessions are so close together, Nicole's launched the pre-work folders for both of those. We do not have much pre-work for session 5 because we know there's not much time. Okay, DCRAF. We know we have covered a lot of ground today, and we've reflected a lot with each other, but we have heard people loud and clear that some people just need quiet, like they need a minute to themselves. So we're going to do similar reflection to what we usually do. We're going to go ahead and open your journals up. You can use the questions that are on page 27, or just rewrite. The 3 things we ask you to do during the reflection time: reflect on all the day today. If something from your classmates stood out to you, please flip to that section of your journal and jot those things down so that you don't forget what stood out to you. And then also remember your survey. So Aaron Green should have emailed you all your survey. Make sure you get that done as well.
And before we start the reflection, we heard one song while we
No,
were
it
all
was-
walking around the gallery walk that we haven't talked about.
So that was Crystal's.
Crystal.
Mary-
So I'm gonna get your song. Do you remember what it was?
Yes.
Okay, awesome.
Just Fine by Mary J. Blige. Really simple. It's a happy song. It's a great affirmation that, you know what, no matter what it is that you're going through, you're going to be just fine. Everything is fine, and forget the haters.
All right. And that's everybody, right? We got everybody.
So we'll take some quiet time.
All right. Thank you for your first long full day of Western Y. You have gotten way beyond the pageant of Y, I hope. And we are so grateful for the time you spent, for all the vulnerability you have brought, and the trust that you built, and the connections that you built, and the inspiration that I'm personally living in. I know many of you and I'm told you are too. We want you to check out and each person can popcorn a word or close that just sums up where you are right now. Just something that's on your mind for you.
One word.
One word. No explanation of it. Just affirmative movement from what was here. Well, I'll start. Grateful. Inspired. Each of a few words. No word. No need to put words. One or less.
Legacy.